Hello friends. In continuation of the tutorial videos on Hitek Studio software, which is related to the Hitek brand HMI, today we want to continue the topic of macros and work through a practical example together so we can master this subject even more. So the program I want to write works like this. I have a display here that, for example, reads the temperature for me. I've placed a numeric input with the address L00, which, for example, shows me the temperature value. Now I want that if this temperature value goes above 10, meaning it exceeds 10 degrees, fan 1 should turn on. If it goes above 20, fan 2 should turn on. If it goes above 30, fan 3, and if it goes above 40, fan 4 should come into the circuit. For this system, I've added a start button, a stop button, and also an indicator to show whether my system is running or not. But I've also added a status indicator for each of the fans. I've installed a lamp. I've put an indicator lamp so I can see whether my fan 1 is running or off right now. So how should I go about programming this? I've set the address for my first fan to LB0 because BT is 0 and 1. My second fan is LB1, my third fan is LB2, and my fourth fan is LB3. Alright, now I'll go into the macro. So as we explained in the previous session, I need to define an alias name for each of my addresses. So for fan 1, as we said, its address is LB0. Here I've defined an alias name. My fan 2 has the address LB1. My fan 3 has the address LB2, and my fan 4 is LB3. I've also added a temperature sensor. The same numeric input we set, the numeric display we set, its address was LW0. So I check the program like this. I have an integer, the one that shows my temperature. It's of the word type, so I set its type accordingly. I'll name the integer. As we said, when we want to read a value, we have to use getWord. I've brought a getWord here. Where did I get it from? From right here. I selected the read word register option. So I clicked on read word register. Here it brought up get word for me. Which get word should I use? Which parameter should I read? The parameter is sensor1. The alias name is sensor1. What's the address of the alias name? Sensor1. Its address is LW0. That means whatever value is read or written in LW0, read it and put it into A. So I defined a variable called A. A reads the current value of my LW0. Alright, I have set up a programming loop which includes a specific condition. This is essentially an if loop. When we are engaged in the process of programming, we commonly use the term if to denote a conditional statement. If it becomes greater than 10, that means we need to use if. Okay, I wrote the if inside the loop. I need to put my condition inside the parentheses. I say if my A, the same sensor value I read, the address LW0 that I read, if it becomes greater than 10, set the bit. Set bit means to write a value. When we say set bit, it means either set a bit value to 0 or 1. Where did I get this from? This is from here. Set bit register, set bit register. Which one? Specifically, fan 1. So what I am saying is if the value of A is greater than 10, if my LW0 value is in fact greater than the number 10, set the bit. Which one? Fan 1. Set the value of fan 1 to 1. This means that you should put the numerical value of 1 into the address location designated as LB0. Otherwise, if the condition is not met, then you should set the bit of fan 1 to 0, which specifically means to put the numerical value of 0 into the fan 1 register. So up to this point, the program says that if the value of LW0, oh my, becomes greater than 10, turn the fan 1 to 1, meaning turn it on. If this were not the case, my condition would not have been met. It will remain 0. Put a 0 in my address, LB0, which is my fan 1. In the rest of the program, we said that if A becomes greater than 20, the temperature value we read becomes greater than 20. Now bring fan 2 into the loop. For fan 2 as well, we set a condition. We said if A becomes greater than 20, if my LW0 becomes greater than 20. Now what should you do? Turn my fan 2 to 1. Set the bit, my fan 2 and my fan 2. What's its address? LB1. So set my LB1 to 1. if this condition is not met. Otherwise, I will set my fan 2 to a value of 0. This means that my fan 2 should absolutely not be on at all. For my fan 3, I also said if A becomes greater than 30, set the bit. Set the value 1 for my fan 3. Otherwise, my fan 3 should be off. It should have the value 0. And for the fourth fan, it's the same. I said if A becomes 40, if LW0 becomes 40, if my temperature goes above 40, turn on my fan 4, set the bit and set the value 1 for fan 4. Otherwise, my fan 4 should be 0. My LB3 value should be 0. Okay, I click save and compile so that my program doesn't have any issues. You can see that it says compile successfully. That means there are no errors in my program. Alright, I brought in a fan here, set its display and put a condition for it. Conditional display, show it only if my LB0 turns on. According to the program I wrote in my macro, when does my LB0 turn on? When my temperature value, that is variable A, reaches 10. So if the temperature actually becomes 10 degrees Celsius, my LB0 indicator light turns on and the fan 1 unit then enters the electrical circuit. For fan 2, I set LB1. I configured the display, specifically a conditional display, to show its status so that I know in the program my LB1 has turned on. LB1 turns on when my sense value reaches 20. For fan 3, I also set LB2. When does LB2 get activated? When the temperature reaches 30, and for fan 4, I set LB3. Conditional display when my LB3 turns on. LB3 also turns on when the temperature is 40. For the indicator lights, I assign the LB0 address for fan 1. Specifically, LB1 is designated for fan 2, LB2 is designated for fan 3, and LB4 is designated for fan 4. Additionally, LB3 is also designated for fan 4. Well, here we had also assigned the LW0 address, but for my macro to get fully activated and truly operational, that is, to effectively start working and perform its intended functions. As we meticulously mentioned in the previous comprehensive session, we absolutely need to carefully set up a dedicated button for it so that this crucial process happens seamlessly and without any hitches. So for this essential start, I precisely defined two specific conditions, two clear and concise instructions for its proper execution. Let me just quickly and efficiently delete these unnecessary elements. As we mentioned in the previous session, to have a button execute a macro, that is to activate the macro, we go to the function key. Here I set it to execute macro. That means as soon as this button is activated, you activate my macro. Which macro? Macro number 1. I confirm it. I also define a bit for it. I say turn on my LB10. For LB10, I set up a signal lamp so I can tell when my system is in run mode. I also assigned the address of this signal lamp to LB10 so I know when the start button has been pressed. My system is in run mode. For the stop, I set it so that whenever the stop button is pressed, it deactivates LB0, LB1, LB2, and LB3. That means I need to turn off all of the fans and also completely turn off the LB10 system so that I know for certain that my entire system is now in the fully off state. However, if you only set the execute macro function on this particular button, then every single time this value changes, you will have to manually trigger this button once for your macro to properly run and execute. In a real program, we can't have an operator standing there all the time just to activate this button, so the macro runs. So what should we do? Here, if I click on this and go to the control setting option, in the After Writing tab, I specify that after each write, meaning after each time the temperature value is read, every time your status changes, every time your value changes, after writing, trigger the macro. Activate my macro number 1. So now, when you first press this start button, it checks the temperature. If the temperature is above 10, it turns on fan 1. If it's lower, my fan 1 will stay off. But after that, Whenever you change this value, it will automatically execute the macro by itself. Why? Because in its control settings, we define that after writing, after each time it's written or receives a value, the macro should be activated. Alright, I'll start the offline simulation. Three seconds pause. Okay, right now all my fans are off. My temperature isn't even being displayed. Now, when I press start, my temperature is displayed. My macro runs once because my temperature is 0. My L00 value is 0. And for fan 1, I set the condition that it should turn on if the temperature is greater than 10. My fan 1 is also off. Now, I'm going to set this temperature to 11. When I set it to 11, since it's greater than 10, fan 1 should turn on. You can see that my fan 1 turned on and its status is set to on. If I set it to 18, it's still on. My fan 2 is off because the condition for fan 2 was that the temperature I read, should be greater than 20. Now, if I set this to 20, my fan still won't turn on because I set the condition that my LW0 has to be greater than 20. Now I'm setting it to 25. My fan 2 also comes into operation. The condition for my fan 3 was that it had to be greater than 30. I set it to 31, and my fan 3 also comes into operation. The condition for my fan 4 was that it had to be greater than 40. You can see that all 4 fans have come into operation. If I set it to 33, since it's less than 40, my fan 4 will turn off. If I set it to 22 again, my fan 3 will go out of operation. If I set it to 12, fan 2 will also go out of operation. For example, if I set it to 5, which is less than 10, my fan 1 will also go out of operation. If I set it to 55 again, all 4 fans will be in operation. If I press stop, all 4 fans should go out of operation.